Last Thursday, Mercedes-Benz, the German automaker, rolled out its Tesla Fighter, a new luxury brand S-Class, EQS. And this is a favorite strategy of automakers, has been for a while, where you put all the new zoomy technology in the more expensive cars. And is this a trend we're going to continue to see throughout the EV industry? And I'm going to talk to Sam Abuelsamid, who's an EV analyst for Guidehouse Insights. So welcome to the interview, Sam.
Hey, Markham, good to be back with you again.
So are we seeing, this traditional approach to rolling out the newer technologies just transferred to the electric vehicle manufacturer?
Yeah, I mean, this has always been the case that new technologies, for the most part, there have been some exceptions, but for the most part, new technologies tend to roll out at the high end of the market because usually things that are new are more expensive, and premium brand buyers have both a greater willingness and ability to pay the extra cost for those kinds of features. That's why, when Tesla first launched, they launched at the high end of the market with the Tesla Roadster, a very expensive sports car, then the Model S and the X, before moving down market with the 3 and the Y. We're seeing the same thing with the legacy automakers now as well, where in many cases, they have launched vehicles at the higher end of the market. Not always, not exclusively, but in many cases. So you've got the Mercedes EQS, the BMW iX that's coming out later this year, but also, they are also bringing out more models at the lower end of the market, more mainstream price points. GM has had the Chevy Bolt in production since 2017, and they're adding the Bolt EUV this year, both at lower price points. But they also have the Hummer EV coming out at well over $100,000 US later this fall. So they're kind of trying to hit all the different market segments, including Mercedes, which today at the Shanghai Auto Show revealed the EQB, which is a compact hatchback that is also electric. So they've kind of hit both ends of the spectrum in just the past few days.
Now, one of the technical advancements that Mercedes announced is that the EQS will have a range of 770 kilometers or 478 miles, which is a pretty significant increase over what we've seen for most EVs in the market. How important is this?
It certainly, for bragging rights, it's important, especially when you're competing at the high end of the market. You don't want to go in there, and try to ask people to pay $150,000 for a car and not be able to offer a comparable range to what the current market leaders are doing. And that obviously in this case is Tesla, which already has vehicles in market with 400 plus miles of range. And there's other competitors coming in like the Lucid Air, which is their top end model is claiming to have over 500 miles of range. So to be competitive, to be seen as competitive, you really have to have that longer range. And we've seen how that's kind of hurt Audi over the last couple of years since they launched the e-tron, which came out with an EPA rating of just 204 miles, which was kind of mediocre compared to what Tesla was offering. The In terms of what customers actually need, most people don't actually need 400 or more miles of driving range. Most people rarely ever drive that far at one stretch. Generally, anything over about 250 miles, 350 kilometers, is typically going to be enough to meet anybody's requirements, even in cold weather performance.
So, what other kinds of technical advancements might we see in the EQS or other luxury brands?
Well, certainly for Mercedes, they're showing a lot of interesting technologies. They've done a lot of interesting details in there with the design of this vehicle. One of the big things that we're seeing is the ability, because of the skateboard chassis architecture, where you've got all the battery stretched out under the floor of the car between the two axles, and you've got electric motors are much smaller than traditional internal combustion engines with the same power. You have the ability to stretch out the passenger compartment. So within you can have a smaller exterior footprint on the vehicle. Basically, you can take the exterior size of the vehicle, bring it down one market segment effectively, while maintaining the same exterior volume or having the same footprint and a larger volume. So as an example, the Hyundai Ioniq that's coming out later this year, it has the exterior size roughly equivalent to the Tucson, their current generation Tucson, but inside it's going to have passenger space closer to the Santa Fe, which is one size class higher. So that's what we're seeing if you look at the EQS, huge interior volume, but also things like their hyperscreen, where you've got this sheet of glass that stretches from pillar to pillar across the entire dashboard with three very large, beautiful displays in there. One for the instrument cluster in front of the driver, an 18-inch center OLED display, and then another display in front of the passenger that has filtering so that only the passenger can see that and interact with it. One of the other neat details that Mercedes has done on the EQS is the windshield washer fluid filler. Because there's no engine under the hood, the car actually has a relatively short hood, and they've done it so that basically you never have to open up the hood. But in order to refill the windshield washer fluid, there's a little thing on the side that looks like what you would see on some cars for the door handles. You tap it, it opens up, and there's a little nozzle there where you can just pour the windshield washer fluid in there and it goes inside. You never have to open up the hood. It's very, very easy access for that.
Now, Mercedes made another comment during their press conference that caught my attention, and that is that EV demand is growing much faster than they thought. So signals a shift in consumer perception and consumer reception, I guess, for electric vehicles. What's your take on that?
Yeah, this is particularly true in Europe and in China. Both markets, have imposed more stringent emission standards, particularly in Europe. As of 2020, manufacturers now have to hit 95 grams per kilometer CO2 emissions fleet average for their entire vehicle fleet, and that has made it a lot tougher for manufacturers to do that with internal combustion engines. So they're introducing more EVs, which is great. They're bringing them out in more market segments at better price points, and the consumers are actually responding now that there are choices, a lot more choices to pick from at prices that more people can afford. They're actually going for EVs. And so the combination of the availability, the pricing, and growing availability of charging infrastructure, we're actually seeing the consumers, once they try one of these things, said, "Hey, I actually like this. I'm going to buy one of these." And the same, similar things are happening in China. They've got some different dynamics there as far as regulations on how many internal combustion vehicles can get license plates in cities like Beijing and Shanghai. So there's limits on how many you can actually buy and register in those areas, and then more incentives to purchase those kinds of vehicles as well.
Well, last question, Sam, and I'm curious your view on this. As you know, if what you're saying is correct in Europe and China, I imagine we'll see it shift to North America in short order. And does that kind of success catch the attention of policymakers who say, "Hey, this policy worked. Maybe we should do more of that." And then you get into this virtuous circle where the policy changes, and then you get more EV demand, and the policy tightens again. And is that what we can see in the maybe in the 2020s and into the 2030s?
Oh, absolutely, and it's already starting to happen. Certainly here in the U.S., we saw California be the first state to come out and say by 2035 we want to ban sales of new internal combustion vehicles. Massachusetts has followed suit. Just in the last few days, the state of Washington has actually gone even more aggressive, and they're targeting 2030 to eliminate sales of new ICE vehicles. At the federal level here with the new administration, the infrastructure proposal that's been put out has huge incentives or big policy changes to try to incentivize EV adoption, new purchase incentives that instead of the tax credit approach that's been taken in the past, where you got the money back on your following year's tax refund, they're going to a point of sale. They want to go to a point of sale rebate process. So when you buy the car, it just reduces the price right at that time, which will make it more accessible to more people, especially in lower middle income market segments. But also expanding the EV infrastructure, um, uh, toughening the emissions regulations. So yeah, we're already seeing a lot of that, a lot of those policy changes happening as people recognize the need to shift to electrification, and the fact that consumers are actually starting to uh, be more interested in this technology as more products become available and more price points where it's accessible to more consumers.
Sam, thank you for this. Always appreciate your insights.
Happy to help.